My name is Gage Powell Evans. I live in Colorado, but I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I have always been the clueless white person who looked at the past events of this country through a lens of a history enthusiast. My father was a proud member of the Sons of the American Revolution and the Society of the Cincinnati, which is the organization formed by the descendants of troops that served directly under George Washington. Although my father's ancestors came from mostly North and South Carolina, the Civil War was never talked about in my family the way the Revolution was. In any case, I was raised in a family that held great pride for the creation myths of the United States. One of my Powell ancestors came over in the 3rd Supply Mission to the Jamestown settlement in Virginia. The beginning of my Evans ancestors in the New World was from a land grant from the King of England. Honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. Founding fathers, pre-Mayflower history, all of that kind of thing. I always had a sense that the Evans ancestors probably owned slaves. It turns out that the Powells also were enslavers. But I didn't think much about it because everyone owned slaves in the South. No matter how false, I think a lot of white people were taught this narrative, that it was just the way things were. Later, in one of my family's trunks, I found a slave tag issued in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina, in 1814. So any vague sense of enslavement disappeared. But it was a long time before I really let myself absorb my family's history with the full impact on the country that we know today. My journey to this realization was a slow dawning of understanding, a shifting from the intellectual interest in history to the recognition of my family's contribution to the white supremacy of this country. The conflicting emotions that I feel are difficult. Trying to resolve my love for the people that in my family that I grew up with, and the shame of knowing that enslaving people allowed that same family to rise to the position of prominence in society. The transformation of my soul came when I found the Coming to the Table organization. I literally jumped for joy when I found out that Lottie Lieb Dula was forming a chapter to facilitate the conversation between descendants of enslavers and enslaved people. I've learned so much about the history that I was never told by my family or taught in school. The intergenerational trauma which was perpetuated from the institution of slavery to today's race-based policies in housing, education, policing, etc. Now I know that finding ways to make reparations is my own personal responsibility, no matter what happens on a national level. I get some income from a trust set up by my great uncle Powell Evans, and I have set that aside in a separate account to be used for reparations. Long term, I hope to find descendants of whoever it was who wore the slave tag. Hopefully, they will be open to meeting with me. Ideally, I would love it if we could decide together the fate of that terrible artifact. For now, my main task is listening to the people most affected by the legacy of slavery, to find out what my place is in the national dialogue, and to understand the best way for me to contribute to the fight for equity, reparations, and healing.